Welcome back to the Old Photo Vault channel. The Last Portrait, Lublin, Poland, winter 1944. The photograph was taken in the back room of the tailor's shop, where the light was steady and everyone sat very still. Anna adjusted her veil, her husband Marek kept his hands folded, and behind them stood Helena and Piotr, solemn as witnesses. At the center sat old Zofia, wrapped in black, her eyes open but unfocused, as if she were listening for something behind the walls. The photographer apologized for the cracks in the glass plate. Wartime supplies were poor. Later, Anna would say Zofia had not wanted to come, that she had died 2 weeks before from the cold. They argued about dates, about grief, about memory. Yet the print never changed. Zofia's face remained sharp while the others softened with age. When Anna's grandchildren found the photo decades later, they noticed something else. Everyone looked toward the camera, except Zofia, who seemed to be looking home. The bed that wouldn't keep her. Bath, England, 1912. They posed in the bedroom because it was the brightest room in the house. Thomas stood straight beside the wardrobe, his wife Edith holding her hands together the way the photographer asked. The bed behind the glass doors had been freshly made, lace tucked in, pillows fluffed to suggest comfort and routine. Edith remembered smoothing that quilt every morning, even after Eleanor died there in the early spring. She said it was habit. She said it meant nothing. When the plate was developed, the photographer hesitated before handing it over. In the far corner, near the dressing table, a pale figure stood barefoot, wearing Eleanor's nightdress, thin as breath on cold air. Thomas laughed it off as a trick of light. Edith did not. She noticed how the figure leaned slightly toward the bed, as if waiting for it to be warm again. The head at the back of the line. Provence, France, summer 1908. They were walking back from the fields before dusk, skirts damp with grass, boots sinking softly into wildflowers. Louise turned once to smile, amused that the photographer insisted on capturing them from behind, as if the day were already finished. Ahead, two men talked quietly about supper and weather, their voices lost in the tall weeds. No one noticed the ground giving way near the path's edge. Later, Louise would say she remembered the sound first. A dull, patient thud, like a melon dropped into soil. The photograph came back weeks later, pale and uneven. At the very end of the line, where the grass grows thicker, something small and dark rose from the earth. A child's head, perhaps, or a woman's. He'd watched them go, mouth slightly open, as if still trying to call their names. The Maid Who Stayed. Vienna, Austria. Autumn 1911. The sitting room was arranged for afternoon quiet. Chairs angled toward the window, lace curtains breathing gently with the light. Frau Adler had asked the photographer to capture the room before she moved, wanting to remember how the house looked when it was still full. The palm by the window was watered daily, the silver polished, the chandelier dusted with care. She said the house ran itself now. When the photograph was developed, there was a shape near the cabinet, pale and narrow, like steam caught mid-thought. It wore the outline of a servant's dress, hands folded low, posture obedient. Frau Adler recognized it at once. Maria had served there for 17 years, had died quietly in the pantry one winter morning, apron still tied. What unsettled Frau Adler was not the figure itself, but that everything around it looked cleaner than the rest of the room, as if Maria had just finished her work. The doll that waited. Salem, Massachusetts. October 1906. The doll was kept on the parlor chair because no one liked to put it away. Its dress was faded, its face rubbed smooth from years of handling, and one arm never quite rested where it should. Clara's mother said it had belonged to her daughter before the fever, before the quiet room upstairs. The photographer meant only to record the furniture before it was sold. The chair framed neatly against the wall. When the plate was developed, a faint shape appeared behind the doll, pressed into the glass like breath. It had the outline of a small girl, head tilted, hands lowered, as if unsure whether she was allowed to touch. Clara had always been careful with rules. What troubled her mother was not the figure itself, but that the doll's fabric looked newly smoothed, as if someone had just finished playing and stepped politely out of view. The one who didn't order a drink. Dayton, Ohio. August 1973. They were celebrating the end of summer, standing close so the bartender could fit them in the frame. Linda smiled the way she always did for pictures. Chin lifted, hair sprayed into careful waves. Her father leaned in, pleased with the night, pleased with the ordinary warmth of it. Behind them, the bar glowed with bottles and quiet conversation. Nothing out of place. Linda remembered the photo years later because of the date stamped on the edge. It was the week before the old hotel closed, before the fire that no one liked to mention. When the print resurfaced in a drawer, she noticed the pale figure between them, half hidden in shadow. It had no drink, no expression, just a steady attention. What unsettled her was not that no one recalled the stranger, but that both she and her father were leaning slightly inward, as if making room for someone who was already there. The face beneath the bar. Portland, Oregon. Late autumn, 1998. It was meant to be a joke, the kind of picture taken after midnight when the music had softened and no one wanted to go home yet. Emily leaned forward on the stool, back bare, head resting on her arms, waiting for the bartender to notice her empty glass. The bar smelled of citrus peel and old wood, familiar enough to feel safe. When the photo was developed, she laughed first. There, in the wood panel beneath the counter, a face seemed to surface. Eyes pale, mouth slack, as if pressed up from the other side. Her friends said it was a stain, a trick of light, too many drinks. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the face was looking at her alone. She remembered the man who used to sit there every night, quiet, watching her without speaking. He stopped coming months before. The unsettling part wasn't the face itself, but how closely its gaze matched the way she remembered his. The one behind the pines. Lake Hartwell, Georgia. July 1942. Eleanor stood on the sandy road with her arms crossed, squinting into the sun as her brother told her not to move. She had borrowed the shorts from a friend, the shirt from her mother, and felt faintly embarrassed by how grown she looked. The cicadas were loud, the day ordinary, the camera heavy with patience. Behind her, the pines pressed close, their needles whispering in the heat. Eleanor remembered laughing just before the shutter clicked, because she thought she saw someone step out of the brush. Later, when the photograph came back, there was a thin shape between the trees, pale and upright, with a face that seemed unfinished. Her mother recognized it at once. A girl named Ruth had drowned in the lake years earlier, wandering off during a picnic. The locals said she followed people home. What unsettled Eleanor was not the figure's presence, but that it stood exactly where she had felt someone watching. The seat she wouldn't leave. Des Moines, Iowa, spring 2004. It was a school assembly, nothing special. Rows of folding chairs and the low hum of parents settling in. Karen leaned forward to see the stage better, her hair falling into her face, already thinking about errands afterward. Behind her, a girl stood smiling, wrapped in a purple scarf that looked slightly too warm for the room. Someone had said she arrived late and didn't find a seat. The photograph was taken quickly, just to remember the day, the ordinary closeness of it. When Karen saw the print later, she paused. The girl's smile felt fixed, too patient. No one remembered her name. A teacher quietly said there had been a student who used to stand in the aisles like that, years before, afraid to sit where she didn't belong. Karen noticed something else then. The girl's eyes weren't on the stage at all. They were watching Karen, as if waiting for her to move so the seat could finally be claimed. The one, waiting in the kitchen. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Late summer, 1989. The cake was store-bought, white frosting already sweating in the heat. And Lillian rested her chin on her hands while everyone finished fussing with candles. The refrigerator hummed behind her, steady and familiar, its top crowded with pots that hadn't been put away yet. It was an ordinary birthday, the kind that passed quietly, marked only by a photograph to remember it later. Lillian smiled because she was supposed to. When the picture came back, she noticed the doorway first. In the narrow dark beside the fridge stood a shape, tall and skinless looking, its head bent slightly, as if trying not to be seen. She asked who had been in the hall that night. No one remembered anyone. Years later, when the house was emptied, Lillian realized something else. In the photo, her hands were folded like someone waiting, and she couldn't recall what she had been waiting for. The Last Adjustment, Hartford, Connecticut. November 1919. The photograph was taken to document the ward before it was renovated. The leather sofa pushed against the wall and the patient laid out neatly for rest. Margaret lay still, hands folded, her breathing shallow but regular, while the nurse leaned in to straighten the blanket and smooth the pillow. Everyone remembered that part. The nurse's cap was always spotless, her movements precise, almost practiced beyond thought. When the plate was developed, the nurse appeared twice, once blurred, once intent. Her face bent close to Margaret's, as if listening for instructions no one else could hear. Hospital records later showed the nurse, Alice Byrne, had died of influenza 3 days before the photograph was taken. Doctors said exhaustion made people see what they needed. But the unsettling detail was this. Margaret recovered quickly after that night and insisted the nurse had promised she would. She said Alice adjusted more than the pillow. She adjusted the ending, the face that would not fade. New Orleans, Louisiana. Circa 1926. The portrait was meant to be formal, a simple head and shoulders study taken on a hot afternoon when the studio fan barely worked. Samuel sat straight, collar tight, trying not to blink while the photographer counted softly. Years later, when the photograph was found in a drawer near the back of the house, the paper had begun to rot from the edges inward. Moisture had eaten at it, leaving stains like fingerprints and rain. Yet the face remained. The eyes were still sharp, watching through the damage, as if the decay had arranged itself around them on purpose. Family members argued about whose portrait it was. Some said Samuel died young, others insisted he lived a long, ordinary life. What unsettled them was how the image kept changing slightly over time. The paper grew thinner, the features clearer. It was as if the photograph was not losing a face at all, but slowly remembering one. The hallway that learned names. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Winter, 1997. The photograph was taken to show how narrow the apartment really was. The long hallway stretching from the front door to the dim kitchen light. Ellen stood just out of frame, waiting for the flash to finish so she could turn the lights back on. The carpet was new, the pictures on the wall carefully spaced, the fire extinguisher freshly installed by the landlord. It was an ordinary place, still learning how to be lived in. When the photo was developed, Ellen noticed a faint blur halfway down the hall, low to the floor, no clear shape to it at first. She dismissed it as dust. But over the next weeks, she began to feel watched when she passed that spot. Always the same quiet pause, always her name forming in her thoughts. When she moved out, the last photo she took showed the blur sharper, standing upright, as if the hallway had finally learned who she was waiting for. The girl who walked behind her. Dorset, England. Late summer, 1905. The photograph was taken in the barley field just past the barns. where the wind moved evenly and the afternoon felt endless. Margaret lifted her hat with both hands, posing the way she had been taught, chin calm, expression practiced. She remembered the grass scratching her gloves and the photographer telling her not to turn around. Behind her, the field blurred into distance, familiar rows she had crossed since childhood. When the print was developed, another figure appeared between the stalks. Bareheaded, pale, standing where the light thinned. Margaret thought it was her cousin at first, until she noticed the dress was wrong, too plain, and the posture uncertain, like someone learning how to stand again. Her mother went quiet when she saw it. Years earlier, a girl from the neighboring farm had vanished in that same field. What unsettled Margaret was not the figure's presence, but that it seemed to be following her steps exactly, always a few moments behind. The toast that wouldn't finish. Wichita, Kansas, Christmas Eve, 1956. The photograph was meant to capture a small victory. Clara in her good dress, the kitchen finally quiet, the table set with a clean cloth and 3 cold bottles waiting their turn. She lifted one bottle and smiled, holding her glass just so, as if pausing for a word she hadn't chosen yet. The cupboards behind her were neatly labeled, the drawers painted the same red she favored for holidays. Later, when the print came back, her sister noticed the blur first, a faint doubling along Clara's arm and waist, like a second posture leaning through the first. They said it was the flash, or movement, or the cheap film. Clara only touched the edge of the picture and nodded. She remembered setting out 4 bottles that night, not 3, and pouring a drink she never raised. What unsettled her wasn't the extra shape, but that it seemed to be mid-toast, waiting for someone to answer. The 4th Smile, San Jose, California. Winter 2007. The picture was taken after dinner, the kind of night that felt easy enough to keep. Daniel leaned in from the left, jacket still on, Mark grinning wide, and Jenny between them, laughing because someone said they all looked like they belonged in the same yearbook photo. The restaurant window behind them was dark, reflecting only a blur of lights and passing cars. It wasn't until weeks later, when Jenny printed the photo for her desk, that she noticed the extra face in the glass. Not a full reflection, just a pale smile hovering where no one had been standing. She showed the others. Daniel shrugged. Mark said it was glare. But Jenny remembered the man who had sat alone at the next table, watching them talk, smiling as if he recognized her. She remembered him leaving before they did. What unsettled her was that the reflection was smiling the same way they were, as if it had been part of the group all along. The shadow that didn't sit. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Autumn 1978. The photo was taken in the evening, after dinner, when the house felt settled and warm. Harold sat back in his favorite chair, smiling easily, hands resting where they always did. The lamp beside him cast a familiar light across the wall, soft enough to forgive clutter and age. His wife liked the picture because it looked peaceful, the kind of moment you assume will repeat itself tomorrow. It wasn't until the photo was developed that she noticed the shadow above his shoulder. It didn't match the lamp. It leaned forward, head bowed slightly, as if standing behind the chair instead of sitting in it. Harold laughed when she pointed it out, saying shadows do strange things. But later that night, she heard footsteps pause behind his chair while he slept. In the photo, the shadow remains standing. Harold does not. The extra embrace, Boulder, Colorado, autumn 1976. They were young enough to believe the night would keep them. Paul's arm rested easily around Susan's shoulders, both of them smiling with eyes half closed, warmed by beer and borrowed music. Someone behind them lifted 2 fingers for a joke, and another friend leaned in from the edge, waiting his turn to laugh. The photo was taken quickly, the flash cutting through smoke and conversation. Years later, Susan found the picture folded inside a book she no longer remembered owning. That was when she noticed the figure between them, pale and unfinished, standing too close to be accidental. Its arm seemed to press where Paul's arm already was, as if sharing the space. Paul died the following spring. A simple accident no one ever explained well. What unsettled Susan was not the extra presence, but how calm she looked in the photo, as though she already felt someone holding on who had no intention of letting go. The seat. No one remembered. Paducah, Kentucky. Thanksgiving night, 1981. They arranged themselves carefully on the floor and sofa, knees touching, hands folded where they always had been. The wood-paneled wall made everyone look warmer, closer, like a proper family should. Someone joked about the cigarette smoke ruining the picture, and the flash went off too bright. It felt finished. When the photo came back, the women noticed the space first. A pale figure seated among them, centered, upright, not leaning into anyone. Her face was calm, older than the others, as if she had practiced that expression longer. No one remembered setting out a chair. No one remembered her arriving. Later, when names were said aloud, the room went quiet at one absence. Aunt Miriam had died the winter before, just after insisting she would host one more holiday. What unsettled them wasn't seeing her there, but realizing everyone had left room without knowing why. If something in these photos felt off, tell me what you noticed first. Do you think it's just light and coincidence, or something that stayed behind? Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe if you want to see more forgotten photos that still seem to be watching us.